So again, welcome everyone to our session today. Measuring training effectiveness today, leverage AI to improve training ROI. Ellen Burns-Johnson's VP Learning Strategy is an award-winning learning experience designer and strategist with over a decade of experience in L&D. She's also a game designer, podcaster, agile practitioner, and innovation evangelist. She believes in people and interactions over processes and tools, and in harnessing the power of play for learning. Her colleague Josh Penzell, VP AI Services with ELB Learning, has over 15 years of experience in sales enablement, process improvement, global strategy, and organizational innovation. He pioneered the theater think methodology, drawing from his theater background, to create novel learning experiences that have profound impacts on businesses like Zillow, Amazon, and Skillsoft. With his unique vision and proven results, Josh has led initiatives that reduce training resources by 50%, increased revenue by 15% in 6 months, and enabled 1,000% growth. Those are great stats. A passionate believer in passion transfer and delivering ROI rather than content, Josh's approach embodies the future of learning and talent development. Also joining Ellen and Josh is Liesel Tvalhoven, who will be monitoring Q&A as well as chat and posting responses as needed. Welcome, Ellen, Josh, and Liesel. You can get started whenever you are ready.
All right, thank you. So I'll start the screen share really quick. Thank you for the great introduction. Let's make sure that I can move the various Zoom pods around on my desktop, and we are good to go. Can everyone see my slide that says measuring training effectiveness today? Okay, I've got a thumbs up from Josh. All right. So we have kind of a mix of strategy and AI today. And I think that's what everyone is hopefully here for. We're going to talk through some ways that we think about AI in terms of how it enables maturity in an L&D department within an organization. Josh has some just fantastic demos to share with you today of tools that he has used to navigate and tackle the common challenges that L&D groups face within organizations, great and small. And then we'll have some time for Q&A throughout. So just again to kind of recap, great introduction, so we won't spend too much time on this, but just to kind of hit for me, I have been using AI in my workflow. Oftentimes I'll be asking Josh, hey, I want to do this. How do I do this? And Josh will coach me on ways that I can work it into my workflow of doing strategic consultation or doing some advanced learning activity design. And there are way more ways to use it in our day-to-day workflow than the ways that I've been using it too. So I'm really hoping that throughout the session, as we're sharing examples, as we're asking questions, that you all take advantage of the chat to share your own experiences, your own techniques, and to also ask questions of one another. Let's pass it back over to Josh. Josh, was there anything that you wanted to talk today about your background in AI and what you're going to bring to today's session?
No, I think that I've been talking about AI for the past year. I travel around and I talk to a lot of organizations about it. I think I see some folks who I've spoken with in the past. Good to see y'all. Interestingly, I'll just point out, I had a former career as a musical theater director, and I'm also one of the 14% of autistic individuals who is employed in the world. I think as we go through this, one of the things that my approach to AI and the way I think has allowed me to sort of go forward in is let's think about end results and what we're trying to achieve, which in the end is always human behavior change or something. For me, the training, the learning, those are simply ways to get to the end. I think I'm seeing a lot of hearts, so we all agree on this. In my career, I've always focused on ROI first. It sometimes caused frustration for me in large organizations. And I'm so excited because now we're at a point where folks like us who want to be ROI driven, who want to prove stuff to the business, And folks who are neurodiverse are going to thrive. And that's what I hope we're going to get out of today, or you'll start to see the rumblings of today. But Ellen, why don't you set the stage? I love all these hearts and thumbs. Please set the stage with sort of how we're thinking about this in terms of where AI fits into L&D strategy and really where they overlap.
Yeah. Yeah, so what we're going to be talking through today and where we'll start the conversation comes from our insights into leading high performance organizations, as well as recent studies and industry publications. So because we get to see behind the scenes in so many different organizations, not just the big ones in the Fortune 100, et cetera, but the small ones as well and the medium size, we're seeing what everyone, what a broad swath of organizations are doing across different levels of L&D maturity. We will share our links and resources at the end of the session. The slides will be available, so everything that you're seeing that's linked in the slides today, you will have access to because you'll be able to get the slides. I do have one technical question, I think, that came in Q&A. I want to make sure that we're getting out the gate. I think mics are disabled across the board, right? So if you have questions, type them into chat. You can also use the Q&A panel if you want to kind of elevate that question. We're monitoring all of that. We'll make sure to get to your questions and comments as they come up. Okay. So I mentioned a moment ago L&D maturity, and I assume some of you have heard of this sort of approach, this sort of model. This is one model of L&D maturity that's out there. This one's from Cognota. They have a learn ops oriented maturity model, and they have a really advanced, very intricate questionnaire that you can go through on their website. Yes, we've linked to it. And you can kind of get some insight into where your organization stacks up in terms of this framework, and also as it stacks up in terms of what other organizations are doing. This isn't the only maturity model out there. There's other ones from Deloitte, from Versin, I think from Acorn. What's interesting is they all seem to have 4 levels. So I think intuitively, this is a good place for us to kind of start and kind of anchor ourselves in this conversation. A maturity model like this is kind of department oriented, right? Or function oriented in terms of how L&D as a function is serving the goals of the wider organization in which it rests. How mature is that function? How embedded is it throughout the organization, and how effective is it at achieving organizational goals or furthering those organizational goals? This maturity model is descriptive, it's kind of guiding, it's comparative. And we're bringing it up here because we think, again, it's a good way of setting the stage for how we'll think about AI in this session. We'll come back to this over and over again. AI can help you no matter where on this, on this ziggurat of levels you are. It can help you move from level 1 to level 2. It can help you move from level 3 to level 4. And it can help you, if you're already at level 4, become continually more effective and more efficient. So that's why we're bringing this up at this stage. Now, what I do want to ask everybody here, and we'll have a poll up in a moment. We won't have the poll yet, but I do want to just say, I'm going to ask you in a moment to kind of quickly evaluate your own organization. And to do that, I want to make sure we get a little bit more of a closer view at what each of these levels represent. So just to kind of highlight some of the characteristics of each of these levels, generally a lower maturity on this framework is a function, an L&D function that relies on more traditional metrics, right? Completion rates, learner satisfaction surveys. If you're thinking about the levels of Kirkpatrick evaluation, we're looking at lower levels of Kirkpatrick evaluation in the data that comes from those activities. Enhanced metrics, the ones that we need, enhanced metrics are the ones that we need to get further up the maturity scale, right? Real-time engagement tracking, behavioral insights, that is the application of learning. Are we actually seeing ROI? Personalized learning pathways. So if you're a more mature L&D function, you're going to be having more of those enhanced metrics. And because everything is sort of a chicken and egg problem, in order to get to those higher levels of maturity, you're going to want to start generating and looking at those enhanced metrics. So having set a little bit more context for what these levels mean, let's launch this poll. So I have 2 questions for you. One is going to be up in the poll, which we'll launch momentarily. which level do you consider your organization's L&D function to be? Are you level 1 reactive? Are you level 2 managed, level 3 strategic, or level 4 predictive? So go ahead um and just take your best shot, right? This isn't a formal evaluation of your L&D functions maturity. If you want to do that, again, the link is in the slides. Just curious to see where everyone's at today. So go ahead and answer that poll. And then after you've answered the poll, I am also curious to see in the chat, what are some things that you experience as an L&D practitioner in your organization or as a leader in your organization? What's getting in the way of you maturing? What are some of the factors that block you? What are some of the things that slow you down? So once you've answered the poll, we'll leave that up for another few seconds or so. Go ahead and answer some things and put some ideas in the chat. What's slowing you down in your maturation journey? And as we're asking everybody to respond in both of those ways, Josh, what do you think about when it comes to L&D maturity? Share a sentence or two on what's going through your brain.
I think what we'll see and what aligns with this in AI is I just want to point out that word at the top right, predictive.
Mhm.
AI is great at predicting. I mean, that's literally all it does. It's predicting one word at a time. It's a prediction engine. And when I say AI, by the way, I'm talking about generative AI in this sense, this new thing.
Mhm.
But it can only
Yeah.
predict based on some sort of context. It can only predict if it knows, the boundaries in which it's predicting. And so one fascinating thing here is this is the same model of maturity that probably, if we started looking at all the AI maturity models out there, there's a lot of the same wording used, reactive,
Mhm.
etc.
Mhm.
And I'm going to guess that we're sort of on the left side in a lot of these for both. And so it's just a very interesting um, dichotomy. But I think they're going to, as we'll talk about, the AI will help us get through this maturity model.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And based on the cross section of just impression I'm getting from the mountain of responses we got in chat, I think you're probably right. So let's pull up the poll and actually see where people evaluated themselves. Okay, all right, this is great. So we have, looks like the bulk of responses that you all put us at level 2, managed, right? So we've got vision and accountability to some degree. We have some defined processes, but we have disparate IT tools
Mm.
and only partial alignment to strategy. That's where it sounds like the bulk of us are. We do have a good number of organizations who are in the reactive stage, right? That's our first stage where you're kind of stuck in that order taker dynamic, and it can be really exhausting. We also have a good number of organizations who are in strategic, which is fantastic. Um, I'm really curious, those of you who are in a predictive organization up at level 4, I'm sure everyone in the chat will have lots of questions for you. So feel free to share your experiences and knowledge, because that's one of the great things about this format. We can learn from one
And I
another.
just want to share, Ellen, some of the things we're getting back
Yeah.
here, right?
Hmm.
Is, I I don't have the resources to measure. I'm not allowed to. Resources are coming in so quickly, or asks or something coming in so quickly, we don't have time to establish stuff. And there's also something here I want to point out. Someone mentioned the word trauma. And I think if
Yeah.
you have been in this industry for a while, this is a term that's been thrown around as well. We are constantly dealing with in this learning behavior sort of world, right? And we felt it. This idea that if you'd only let me do my job correctly, I could give you the results you wanted, right? And for the 3% who are at the predictive, or even the 22% at the strategic, how
Hmm.
you've worked through that is I think we'd all love to benefit from. And
Hmm.
that's only a quarter of us,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so I just point that out, that we're also thinking AI, we're so far behind, whatever. But L&D and our strategies have been around forever, right? 30 years, 40 years, we could say it's been around for as long as work's been around. So
Hmm.
I just suggest that we're not as behind on AI as we think we are. And it actually might help us where we are in L&D right now. If we're not, it might, there might be a nice way that those correlate.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think those parallels of the maturity models is an interesting observation that we could do an entire separate webinar potentially on is, huh, what are the patterns that underscore maturity models? But I'm glad that you mentioned that because I think if it were easy, we wouldn't have a webinar on it, right? If it were easy to do, then we wouldn't have maturity models because we wouldn't need these these resources to give us guidelines and ideas about where we can grow and where we can take our organizations and where we can take ourselves. So it is a journey. It takes a while, and it takes a lot of people working together to figure it out continuously, to move up that, to move up those levels. But we're here because we believe in human development. We're here because we believe in continuous improvement. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this role, in the various roles that we have. So we're going to keep at it, and we'll keep sharing what we have found works, and we'll keep getting better. So in the interest of building on what Josh said, when we think about AI, just like any other technology, it's not a magical artifact. It's not a sword that you can pull out of the stone and then, you're the king. But it can help you accelerate the process of maturing your L&D. AI can make it easier to capture those enhanced metrics that point more directly to ROI and help you get a more permanent seat at the table, quote unquote. Um, AI enables, from the development and design perspective, it enables better learning, which then enables better metrics, which then enables proven ROI, right? So it is this thing that can be brought in at any part of your L&D pipeline to help you accelerate that process of maturing. You can use AI-based solutions to reduce the amount of time that it takes to build things, the number of iterations and experimentations that it takes to reach that higher level. And today we're going to share some solutions that are built and tested to help you do just that, and talk through how you can take those solutions and apply them in different ways according to your specific L&D strategy within your organization. So to do that, I think we are in a moment going to pass the mic to Josh. But just to give a little bit more context to Josh, so he can tailor what he's going to talk about to where you all are, I am curious to hear from you all in chat. What are some of the ways you're currently using AI in your organization? So here on this screen, I've just kind of flashed some of the logos of some of the most popular consumer and organizational AI tools. There are many, many more than this. There are so many.
Yeah.
And we don't need to necessarily know which models you're using, but whatever your model of choice, how are you using it? And maybe how would you like to use it next? Go ahead and put your messages in chat. Okay, so we see people using Copilot. I see Mary Ellen said that she's creating survey questions from learning objectives. I like that connection there, right? Technical training development with Copilot, great. Digital adaptation, okay. Adaptation platforms, right? We're talking about personalized learning paths when we're talking about learning adaptation. I love that. Creating course visuals, that's a great example of accelerating development. A starting point for developing lesson plans. Josh, I know you're going to really enjoy that one because you have something to share with that today. Updating learning objectives. I like that. Again, efficiency, course descriptions, content outlines, assessments. Okay, all right. Yep. For brainstorming. Oh, you're going to talk about that in just a moment, Josh, using
Yeah, this is,
LLMs as a partner. Go ahead.
yeah, I want to share for me, the main blocker right now to AI adoption is simply the decision to use AI. So the fact that everyone is using this, that is huge. And everything that we're going to talk about and I'm going to show in some slightly different tools. Some of them might have slightly different features, but essentially everything I'll demonstrate is doable from any of the models you're looking at, or will be doable in the near future once your tools catch up, right? And your organizations catch up. So I'm going to talk through some of how I think about using AI. And if you want to stop sharing your screen here for a second, Ellen.
All right. Take it over, Josh.
Yeah. I'm going to share a few slides, and then I'm going to switch over to the demo portion because I want you to see everything working. But one thing I want you to start thinking about now is how different generative AI is from other tools that you have engaged with. Meaning that most tools you use, you're putting in something very discrete and you're getting something very discrete out. And it's very fixed. But AI operates differently. It literally has a mind of its own. And in that way, I'd like you to start thinking about it not as a tool, but as a team member you could hire, or a team itself you can hire. And I want you to think even further about that every time you open up a chat window, imagine you're hiring a brand new temp, maybe a temp who doesn't have an NDA, but you are hiring that person fresh. And what a prompt essentially does is the onboarding document for that new hire, right? So I've created some onboarding documents that I'm going to show you I've given to my hires. But I'll also try to show you at some point how I work with my new hires so that I create these things. But I want to point out everything I'm about to show you, it's all been created using language. Okay? So English language. All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. So one of the things we were just talking about, and Ellen, can I get a thumbs up? You can see my screen. Cool. One of the things we were just talking about is adaptive learning. So how can I use AI, not just to start the process, not just to do stuff, but how can I use AI to help me make content that adapts to the user or that meets all the needs of my users? One thing I've created is a content reviewer. I'll demonstrate this in a second. But I want you to imagine that instead of you having to go to a tool and say, hey, make this better, just improve this, put this in a fourth grade level. Or instead of just reviewing it from having one learner or two SMEs review it, how could you get a whole team of people to review it? How could you get all of the learners, all the different personas who might go through your training to literally take the training ahead of time and give you feedback? That's what my content reviewer is going to do when I show it to you in a second. I'm also going to show you an adaptive tutor. So it's one thing to take the content and have it reviewed from a bunch of different perspectives so that you can either create a lot of personalized learning or you can create one training that meets the thing, right? But what about doing that at scale? What about just providing the way to learn and not the information, and letting the learner learn in the moment as they need what they need, right? And I think I was seeing people, this is exactly, what they want. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second so that I can open up the fun one and share that one for you.
While you're doing that, Josh, I just want to acknowledge the continued good ideas that are being shared in the
Good.
chat. And just double checking with Nadine that we will be able to share the chat log afterwards.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure. So, for instance, I want to show you the content reviewer. I put in a workshop that I created called AI Empowerment. I'm just going to throw this in. And I want to point out, I try to reduce the cognitive load I'm going to have at the front. So rather than me even say, hey, review this from these 10 perspectives, I actually have my content review team first look at the content and determine who's the intended audience and what are they trying to get out of this. Then, based on that, and I can react to it, right? Because it's bringing me stuff, I'm coaching it. But now it's going to go and create those personas for me. I have them creating these fairly limited, but you can have them be extremely in-depth. So it's creating a bunch of folks to go through my content. And now it's going to put those folks into a focus group discussion. And they're then going to provide me all of the feedback that the focus group has. So now I'm getting insights on this learning from a whole bunch of learners that I didn't even have to create necessarily. And the value here is I can do this again and again and again. Now, your job is to be reacting to this and saying, yes, that's right. No, I don't think so, and using your expertise. But I want you to imagine now if you took all of your learner personas and you took your training outline and said either, I want you to review this from all of these 10 so that I can have the most optimized training for everyone, or I want you to take this training and create 10 different paths based on it. And look at how quickly we were able to do that. So the point here I just want to bring out is this is not productivity and efficiency as much as it's doing better work. Now, we were just saying that's great, there's a lot of prep, but can we do this in the moment of learning? Yes.
Hey,
Here's a
Josh.
tool, a coach that I created. Sorry, go ahead.
Josh, yeah, before we
Yes.
move on to the next tool, there were a couple questions in chat that came up about access to this. I know we're sharing links to all the tools that you've created, but I don't know if we will be able to, will participants be able to access this specific one? Because I think it's
Yeah,
really
so
tailored.
here's the cool thing. Everything I'm showing you
Okay.
today, not only will I sell you the links, you will also be able to get the prompts. So my onboarding document I created, I'll send that to you. And if you have Copilot, for instance, you can take that and use this here. If you have Claude, you can take it and use it there. I'm not gatekeeping anything. I hope what you're getting out of this instead is mindset and thinking differently about what you can do. And these are starting points for you. So I just wanted to show you, by the way, here it is. Here's the onboarding document. And I want to tell you, I didn't write it. You know who wrote it? AI. I delegated to my assistant and said, hey, write this prompt for me now that I've gotten where I want. So close that one. Let's go to my adaptive tutor. Ellen, I can't see the chat right now, but why don't you give me a topic we want to learn about so I can demonstrate how this could work? And yes, before you ask, this is something you could integrate into Storyline if you wanted, or into Lectora, or into your course authoring of choice. So give me any topic so we can see how this works, Ellen, or
All
anyone
right, all
from
right,
there.
chat. All right, chat, tell us what we should learn about today. Give us some ideas. Incident command system.
Okay,
That's what
so
our
again,
first idea. Okay, go ahead.
what's cool about this is it's trained on the full internet. It has all the information in the world. Now, I did not tell it, learn all this information. What I told it instead is, here's how I want you to run the learning experience. And the way it does that is it starts by asking me a question to understand where I am. Stalking. I might say something like, I'm not sure. It's something, so when there's, okay, let's see how it responds. Now it's going to teach me some information. It's going to reinforce that. And then it's checking in with me. And it'll continue to build on this with more questions. And eventually, it'll provide me kind of a summary of what I learned. Now, I want you to think about something for a second. This is super cool, super fascinating. Obviously, your minds are being blown. But the other thing I'm getting right now is all of the dialogue between my learner and the AI. And that is text that I now have, that is data that I can use. And just want to go back to this right quickly. I want you to now think about all the different ways you could think about AI in a learning environment. Is this full screen again, Ellen?
7 AI
Okay.
roles.
Yes. So Ethan Mollick, who if you're not following him, you need to, he proposed that there are 7 AI roles that you can have with a learner in the center. AI can be a simulator. AI can coach you metacognitively. My favorite, though, and the one I just always love in this, look at that AI student. We just saw the AI tutor at the bottom, essentially. But I want you to think about a world where your learner is not taking the adaptive tutor and then passing a quiz, but instead is using the adaptive tutor and then has to teach an AI student to pass the quiz. And imagine all of the interesting minutia of data you're starting to capture here. And as you think about that, this reflects something really important about AI. The reason it works so well like this is because it's really good at an individual level. It responds to the individual. It empowers the individual. You are relinquishing some control and creating a framework and allowing them freedom within it, right? Which I know is like, if I could just create a vessel for learning, right? But let's take that even further and think, if that's why it's good, what are the challenges going to be? Because every individual thinks differently. So let's look at this real quickly, and Ellen, you'll have to help me. If I asked you what certainty that this thing's going to happen. So if I said, hey, that's a slam dunk, is that going to happen 100% of the time, 90% of the time, 80% of the time? Ellen, people will start typing this in, right? And I'm guessing we're seeing a lot of 100%, 90%, something in there.
Let's see. I'm not seeing anyone. Yeah, I'm
That's
seeing a
fine.
couple things. Yeah.
All right, that's fine.
100%.
So,
Yep, 100%.
all right. And does anyone disagree? How about that thing is a certainty? Or that thing is a serious possibility? What are the percentages
99.9.
of each of these? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Now here's what's fascinating. Here's the human average of each of these when we do these across a group. And by the way, this is Annie Duke. You can see the information below. When we ask the AI against the average, sometimes it's okay, right? And sometimes it's off. But let me show you this, which is among the humans, there's a 50% range. So when we think about tools and launching stuff from the top down, right, we think about having to get to that average. But there's a 50% in almost every of these variation between the humans. That's why it works so well adapting to each individual. But that's also the challenge we have in establishing something concrete at the top. Now, I know we're talking about ROI, and I want to make sure we're getting there. And one of the things we can't do is we cannot provide ROI unless we know what we're measuring. And frankly, as a lot of you pointed out, our stakeholders, they are not forthcoming in what they need. There might be a few reasons for that. I think one is, do they actually know what they need? Now, we would love to have a million conversations with them, but sometimes what happens, they get defensive, they don't want to engage. So what if I could provide them, which I'll show you in a second, an SME collaborator that can ask them questions and challenge them on some of the basic information that sometimes they might not give us. So if they say something like, I need help overcoming objections, right? Generally, I might ask, well, what does that mean? Somehow the AI, they might not be as defensive about it, right? So I'm going to show this in just a second. But I also want to point out, we're starting to get all this language. I've been keep talking about the language we're getting and all that data point. And how do we make sense of that? Well, one thing we've been doing with our stakeholders is looking at the language they use to understand if they're actually ready to commit to a project. So are they ready for the training? And to do this, we looked at research that had nothing to do with AI. This is psychological research. It's a framework. essentially it's statistically proven that certain people use certain words, right? So if instead of saying, I want to do something, I'm able to do something, I will do something, right? These different measures, desirability, reasons, needs, commitment, activation, taking steps, we can categorize the language into that. And so what I can do is use AI to look at the language and determine how strong desire is, how strong ability is, etc. And so, for instance, I can have someone submitting a training request, and this might take me a lot of time, but I can have on the back end GPT working through this. And by the way we set this up is in Excel, sending out formulas to GPT. And yes, don't worry, you'll get it. And actually, we have scores made, but that's not the powerful part. The powerful part is they can submit this and immediately they can see how their priority ranks. Now, I want to be clear. We're not using this in production in a sense of telling our stakeholders or the boss, right, that they're putting something and it's wrong. We use this as a tool to help them understand and help us understand how ready they really are to go down this route. So I want to point out what we're doing here is actually using the AI as a metacognitive tool to define the metrics at the very beginning of our process. Because as we already saw, right, it can predict, but it needs us to define things. And the fact of the matter is, you need your stakeholders, you need your SMEs, you need them to define these metrics for you up front. We cannot do that for them. How can we use AI to help us? So if you want to, by the way, look at that training triage there, that form, you can actually go fill out this and see how it works. I'm going to, again, see if I can share my screen here. So here's this training triage form. I'll just show you an example of how this might work. So I need training now on objectives because the sales professionals aren't selling well, whatever it is. So now we submit this. There's some back-end stuff going on. And in about 60 seconds, I can click this link. It'll tell me how what I just submitted ranks. Let me also go to this SME collaborator I created while that's working. What I've created is this thing will say, hey, tell me if you're working on a project already. And by the way, you can have these GPTs go to a Google Doc or go to an Excel spreadsheet. That's how we can capture all this data. So I'll say I'm Bob, from the sales team, working on I'm Amy from the service team working on CSAT improvement project. And what I want you to notice is how this thing will push back and ask the questions, right? That sometimes I won't, or I forget to, or I'm sped through. And again, I'm capturing this data, I'm capturing all this information, and now I can use that in a language-based way, right? So look, it's saying, can you tell me specific situations? Can you give me interactions? And now I'm getting not only more information for me, I'm helping them think through this problem. Let's go back to our training triage form. And here it is. It says, hey, thank you. We actually have another project that's better because here's what we think. Here's some information, and you can get feedback. Now, again, on the back end, we could look at this and you could see the spreadsheet. We're using this as a tool, and it's analyzing this language. But I want you to start thinking about that in the sense of, are there other ways you can start to analyze all this cool data you're getting? Now, once you're getting all that data, now we can start talking about ROI. First question is going to be, how do we provide how do we look at the data? How do we analyze it? I want to show you again, this isn't Claude. I like Claude because it can do visuals. I've put 3 CSVs here of feedback. It's made up feedback. I'm just going to say work your magic because I've actually already built my agent here. And what this is going to do is quickly look through the information and create me an interactive visualization that shows the key points from this feedback. By the way, I'll use this with all sorts of things, not just data. I'll use it with scientific articles to quickly create a website I can send out. I'm going to let this work for the sake of having a cake in the oven, so to speak. This is one that I already created. And this is a lot easier for me to present and to digest, especially with my stakeholders. Also, I was able to do it in seconds. So imagine all that LMS data you have. And imagine pulling those CSVs out and being able to do something like this. Now, before the security stuff, I realize we're going to get into that, and I can address all that at the end, okay? Let's go back. Here is a slightly different one it created. Look at that. One sentence. Work your magic. And the best thing about this tool, look at this. I just love this. Notable feedback, confidence levels. It's not that this is saving me time. I literally would never have been able to do this before. I just wouldn't have been able to. That's why this isn't about productivity. But look at this. There's this publish button at the bottom. I think only if you have the paid version. But check this out. You can send that link to anyone on your team, any of your stakeholders. You don't want to? That's fine. You got all the code here. You could copy and paste. And if you wanted to send this out and someone wants to make changes to it, they can hit a little remix button. It'll recreate it, and now they can make changes to it. So we are now working collaboratively with our stakeholders, helping them and us to understand the need, which is going to help us demonstrate to them we're trying to bring them value. By the way, if they need a harder, they need something harder, cool. We can do that too. I used Claude, what I just showed you, to create an L&D ROI calculator. I'll share this with you, but again, this is something you can create. And so, for instance, the way this works is I can say, all right, maybe I have a current productivity level of 20. I want to get to 75. I have a 50% confidence this will work. All right, let's go to the inputs. Let's say we want to try VR training for that. I can put in the costs, the count, how much their salary is, so I can understand how much money we're losing. I can calculate that ROI. Oh, that's cool. Look at that annual benefit, maybe. I mean, obviously we're faking stuff, right? But let's go to add scenario, and let's do that again. But this time, let's maybe do it with on-the-job training. Not going to change this for right now, just because. Calculate the ROI. We'll add that scenario. And look at this. Now I have two scenarios I can compare with my stakeholder. Doesn't look actually that according to this, there's much different. So maybe I go for scenario 2 because the cost is smaller. Not perfect, but now I can have this conversation and I can force them to give me the numbers. And by the way, you hit this remix artifact, you can do it yourself.
Josh, a couple questions coming in from the chat.
I'm sure there might be more than a couple, but please.
There are quite a few, but some of them were repeats, so I was able to kind of distill them into one thing. The number one question right now is, hey, I can't access these links for various reasons, firewalls, or we don't have an account, etc. Will we be able to, will participants be able to get downloads to the prompts? Are you going to share those? Yes.
After this session, so this session will end. I will send you all of these links. I will also send you a custom GPT agent that is trained on this workshop. So after this, you can go home, pick it up on your phone if you can't get it, and you can talk to our workshop. So it's not just, hey, here's the thing, here's that. You can brainstorm with our workshop afterwards. Oh, wow. Another, by the way, idea that you can be doing. And now imagine if you put that collectively someplace, all that cool data you're getting, not just the data of what they're asking, why they're asking it, what follow-ups. Now, we still have to capture that, But we might be able to solve that problem too. But Ellen, there might be a couple other questions.
A couple ones. So I think,
And yes, by the way, I want
uh,
to point out, I'll send you all the links. You'll also have all the prompts, so you can recreate all of these in your own thing. Might not work exactly the same as some of these, but you're going to get it all.
yeah, okay, good. There are lots of hearts floating up across the screen, which makes me very happy. I know, right? Yay. Okay, a couple questions. I'm not going to get to everything that was coming up in chat. We'll pause again later to get more questions, but two ones that I think were really interesting. One question came in from Jessica. So the language categorization, we're talking about the intake analyzer.
Mhm,
Does
mhm.
that take into consideration ethno-linguistic differences? And my response to Jessica's was, I think it can. I'm going to ask Josh how.
So I'll be honest, we have a colleague named Scott who is our data analyst. He's the one he created this and had the peer reviewed research it was based on. He's also been published on using generative AI for empathy training. So if you will, I would love to answer that question after the fact. So either we can capture it now, because I think it's a great question, and then I'll send it out to everyone, because I think what you're essentially asking for is show me the data behind this. Um, and I don't know if it's been adjusted for any of that stuff yet, right? And that might be a really great point. So,
Yeah, I'm
and I
curious
don't
if
want to
it's,
say, sorry, I didn't mean any of that stuff. I'm not trying to throw it
yeah.
on. I don't want to disrespect what you're saying by mispronouncing the, ethno-linguistic aspects of what you're talking about.
Yeah, my initial question on that is it something that's handled by the model, or is it something that you'd have to add into the training, into the prompt of some sort? So it's a big topic, I think. Yeah,
AI can do anything.
right.
The prompting and the boundaries are what you're doing, but I just want to tell you, um, studies show that even an untrained model with no proprietary data can do better than, equal to, very small less than one that's properly trained.
Mm.
So you take that. New York Times actually just put out an article that ChatGPT successfully diagnosed uh, better than doctors and better than doctors using ChatGPT. So go look at that article, but there's a lot to dig into there. Um,
I think I'm going to
I
look at
know
that
there's
article
probably
with a
more
glass of wine.
questions.
But yeah,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
a
you
glass of wine and maybe a Manhattan. I have two more things I want to show because I'm not done blowing minds. And then I think we can come back to some of this. Is that okay?
awesome. Yep, there are more questions when you're ready.
There will be tons of them, but I also want to make sure I appropriately share with you everything, right?
Sure.
So
Thanks, Josh.
ROI, right? Can you see this screen? Okay. But you can do anything. So one problem we were running into is learning objectives. It's a skill that unless you learned ISD 20, 15 years ago, right? You might be a little dry on. I tried can use ChatGPT to create something, but you can create entire programs to solve these problems. Here's one I created. I'm not a coder. I want to be very clear. I do not code. I have a Master of Fine Arts in Theater and an MBA. Throw that out there so you don't think I'm. This was made solely by typing in English. And what I can do is upload content and it will generate objectives for me, or I can put the objectives in and it will verify them and then check them against all my content. Now, the magic here isn't what it's doing, although, yes, it's using AI. The magic is I was able to build this without having to code at all. And this starts to get me to think about what are the new types of data that we could be capturing? What could we be thinking of even broader as far as ROI so that we can make ourselves sort of like the leaders? And by the way, you can see this. If I hit one of these things, it'll start analyzing it. But I'm going to stop sharing this screen and share another one. because this is the one that I probably my favorite thing. So there's a bunch of these tools that let you program essentially without coding. This one's called Replit. You can see the little name at the top. So again, this is a tool you'll have to use and go off right. But I just want to show you how a thought can quickly turn to reality in this. I was at TechLearn thinking about data, and I mentioned to someone, hey, we all have webcams. Why am I not able to use eye tracking in my e-learning? Is it useful? I don't know. But why can't I? So I went into this tool. And if you can now see that dot moving, and I'm sure you just saw the analysis on the right. The magic here is not what it's doing, although that's really cool. The magic there is that I was able to build this. It's not perfect, as you can tell. But I never would have been able to think about that before. And so I want you to start thinking from a point of abundance, not scarcity. You can do anything. You're not limited by PowerPoint, storyline, LMSs, none of that. You need to start from the other side, and then you can back in. And by the way, this is available today. Imagine a year from now. Like, what? All right. I think I got a bunch of mind's blowing. We got 8 minutes left. Ellen, I'm going to throw it over to you to maybe, yeah. We knew it would happen, right? I can't hear you, Ellen. Oh, no, I can't hear you. I think you're muted on the
I was
actual
muted.
screen.
I was muted on the
Yeah.
platform. Yeah. But I was saying exactly what you were saying, watching everybody's reactions and also the chat. I think one of my favorite comments was Sean, who typed in all caps, "This is insane!" Exclamation 3 times. Nice! Exclamation 4 times. Okay. As an instructional, okay, all right. There are definitely a few things that we need to speak to. So let's
Okay.
get to some of the questions that came up earlier, and I'm going to
That-
proceed with the questions from least scary to
yeah, that's good.
most
Or maybe
scary.
most scary, whichever ones you want to address. And there was one at the very beginning that we
Mhm.
definitely want to approach to,
Okay.
about.
Yeah, we'll see
Yeah.
if I remember that one. Okay, so first one, I think this is a question. I think about the general solutions you were talking about. Does this work? Do these solutions work with global learners writing in different languages? So if you're asking for, that adaptive tutor, can it work with English, French, German, Hindi?
So
What
I'll
do you
give
know?
you, there's two ways I would answer that. The first is, why don't you ask AI? Ask it when I send it to you. And the second answer is going to be, and when it does answer, it'll tell you it can speak in any language. Not only that, but now in the audio version, if you start speaking, Castilian Spanish to it versus Spanish from Mexico, it adjusts its dialect and its word choice. So we're not just in translation anymore, we're in localization.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Building on that, how do we know in an adaptive tutor situation that what the learner is learning from the tutor is correct, right? Jessica followed up on this later. AI can be confidently wrong. We have to be cautious. How do we manage that?
That's where we need to do our jobs in making sure that we're creating essentially prompts and information stores that provide the limits, right? I also think, though, we need to think about new ways of doing the learning. So we have to start to acknowledge and create environments where there is a possibility that things are wrong. And actually, their job is to be checking it. And that's where the learning should be occurring, right? It's a metacognitive approach. There's a great article out there called The Metacognition Revolution. I think
Yeah.
that's where it goes. So, for instance, the adaptive tutor that I was talking about with the student AI, if the student has to pass the quiz, then I could tell someone, hey, here's your adaptive tutor, but it might lie to you, so you need to check all the sources. And that's how I would think about creating an environment that solves against that.
Okay. Okay. So you are, in order to help make sure that there is a high degree of accuracy, because even with human created content, we're not going to be able to achieve 100% accuracy. So to maximize accuracy, you need to make sure that the environment, the space that
It,
the GPT or the solution is operating in is well
it,
cultivated.
um, this is not like what do you do about, how do you roll out the internet to your learners?
Yeah. Okay.
AI is here, so they're using it, right? So if they're using it, they're going to see hallucinations. It's our job to work into our way of training them and of their learning. They need a new way of learning so that when they're learning and we're not even there, they know to double check, right?
Okay.
So it's actually like it's like the cognitive staying in the moment that we actually need to be working on. That's why the experience is now more important than the content, I think, you
Yeah,
know?
and that's interesting. But I think it gets to a question that Ishwari had, specifically, what about the authentication of AI generated content? Can we do away with human verification? And what I'm hearing from you is the process by which that learning, is that the right type of learning experience to create in this day and age? I don't know.
I I don't know if I'd want AI making decisions on my behalf now.
Sure.
And I
Yeah.
think the way I would look at this again is how quickly it can provide me responses, which allows me to react to it. So for me, the power is not that it can simulate a discussion. It's that
Mhm.
immediately after it simulates that discussion, I can review that discussion. I can provide coaching to myself on that discussion. Right. So,
Yeah.
um, and by the way, I'm going to get you all the links. So I'm sorry that you can't get on it now. Don't worry. Um,
Yeah. There will be
by
an
the
email
way,
sent within the next couple of days with recording links and
yes,
resource links.
but I do want to share because I know someone did ask about, oh, how do I prove, ROI and yada, yada, yada. Um, One tool I also want to share that I created is an ROI calculator. Um, Sometimes, sorry, hold on. Can you see the ROI calculator? Sometimes I might not need to even know what value I'm going to get. I just need to know how much value I need to get, right? So I'm just going to hit calculate on this. But you know, if you can save 10 minutes a day, it probably pays for itself. Um, is a good ROI to go at. And there are just some natural things we need to think about. One is, are you going to get talent if you're not embracing AI? When everyone coming into the workforce will have used AI. If
Yeah.
people want to go to the coolest, craziest, newest companies, how will they use this, right? Where are they going to go?
Right.
78% of people are using AI at work anyway, so there's already a risk. And by the way, I created that ROI calculator in Claude. I'll give it to you, but you can do it right now. Um, it- anyway, these are all, you can run an LLM on locally on your own phone. So there's no excuse, right? You just need to have a strategic discussion with them. And part of the problem is they're so figuring it out that they don't know. Um, it's just new. You have data for classification. We have training on stuff like regulation, fair disclosure. We've made deals with our cloud computing. So anyway, sorry, Ellen. I know we reached the end there really quickly.
We did. It flew by. Well, I mean, I think that indicates it's valuable. Nadine, is it okay if we hang on for a few minutes longer, just for people who can stay? We can answer more of those questions.
Sure, I think that would be great. I just want to say thank you so much for a wonderful presentation and the tag teaming that you guys did. A few people have commented on that in the chat about how well the two of you worked together to present this. So thank you to the two of you for the content, and thank you to Lisa for monitoring the chat and the Q&A. There were quite a few questions in the Q&A. I'm hoping that you got to most of them. And Josh, it looks like Matthew wants you so that you can talk to his director and he'll return you
He can,
to
Matthew,
ChatGPT promptly.
find me on LinkedIn or any place.
Yeah.
I'm also happy to provide anyone who reaches out with, at least for a Mac right now, a local LLM you can run on your computer with no internet.
Yeah. I think the thing is that technology in general is changing so quickly. It just makes our head spin or our minds blow, and AI is a big piece of that today. So thank you so much for bringing
It,
some insight into what's possible
it,
for us
if
today.
all right, and if all we do is realize, oh my God, like if that's literally all we're doing right now, that's great because that means we're shaken out of complacency, which means we'll start observing our habits, which means now we have options to start engaging with AI in different ways,
Yeah.
which, by the way, is human behavioral learning.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I'm just going to stop so that you guys can continue for, I don't know how long you want to go, Ellen. I'll let you tell me when you think you're done.
Yeah, I think we can take 10, 15 minutes, Josh. Is that good with you?
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Let's look at the answers. So I think Matthew, I'm hoping I provided some context on that answer. Um, Jen says you mentioned considering ChatGPT as someone without NDA. What if you want to use AI for something that you don't want to you don't want them to have as public knowledge? Few things. One is there's a lot of stuff out there that you might not be aware of. So just try asking, sometimes is like see what it comes up with. Um, However, there are ways to get around the security thing depending on your organization. You can have direct relationships with the LLM companies. Of course, just like with any cloud provider, you have to be willing to have an exchange, right? And there are models you can run on your computer without internet. They're slower, they're not as great, but they'll do the job. And if you'd like, reach out to me, Jen, and I can walk you through how to do that, or go ask AI, which is really cool. Instead of creating training for different learner personas, why don't we give L&D give prompts to learners to interact directly with AI? So I love that. I mean, if the future will be every single learner has an agent that's trained on them. And if you wanted to roll that out today, I would create an agent that helps you create people agents, just like I have an agent to help me create these webinar assistants.
Yeah, when you say the
Happy
future,
again to talk
Josh,
more about that.
when
Yeah.
you say the future, the reason that it's not now is cultural and institutional momentum, right? The technology is already there to be able to provide that.
Technology's there. Insurance is holding us back a lot right now. Can talk to you about that all day, but no one wants to risk what they can't insure, and right now there's no insurance. So, what is the best way to introduce these AI tools into an instructor-led class where the trainer feels their job is being taken over by technology? How do you reassure them? I can provide you some data, and we could talk more about it, Maria. Essentially, though, only 5% of jobs are automatable. 60% of jobs have 30% that can be automated. And the research is showing us, and the people who are investing in this are showing us, that the more investment in AI, the more hiring and the more budget that people get, which is counter. But what it's demonstrating is we're moving towards ROI and value-based work rather than content and training-based work. But yeah, these are all great questions, a lot to discuss, but feel free to reach out to Ellen and I, and we could talk about it more. How do you save the helpers? What I would do is, if you don't have a way to put them into GPTs like I did, you always have a way to save your conversation. So once you type in that prompt and the conversation is made and Copilot is over, it's on the other side, rename the conversation and make it in like bold. My SME collaborator. If you need to roll it out to others organizationally to talk about what's possible, do I recommend any book or training on how to create an agent in AI? Reach out to me. Frankly, I have not found one that I love, because for me, I believe all the upfront prompting is overwhelming and it is cognitively keeping us from starting. So what I do is I talk with the AI like an employee. I start talking with it. I figure out what I want. I get it to give me exactly what I want. And then rather than stopping, I ask it to tell me what it learned, what mistakes it made, what it would do differently next time. And then I ask it to write a prompt that I could give it again. And that's how I prompt. So my go to all the training you want. If you want to find 30 minutes with me, um, happy to help. My organization blocks access to Google Forms because, of course, it does. I will get you that, Matthew, if you'll just reach out to me or remind me. 100%, or someone will grab that. On average, how long did it take you to program each of these AI tools? Yeah. This is all myself. I would say that once you get going, once you do about 10 hours of just working in AI, you'll get to know it. I can create one of these now from scratch in 30 minutes to an hour, getting it production ready, where you're really refining the user experience and trying to make sure it's not giving fake information. That takes about 10 hours. But yeah, and if you want to reach out, we do, I provide workshops on this. We do other trainings, but happy to talk through it more. So sorry, I didn't mean to take all those, Ellen, but I
No, you were
figured
doing
I could
great.
answer them quickly.
I was taking care of the jokes in the chat while you were doing the hard, serious stuff.
Oh,
And
good.
I like that
Someone
division of
asked.
labor.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, you were
someone
seeing
asked for the
Dan's mention?
results.
Yes. I'm glad you saw that. That was what I was going to ask about next.
Oh man, I hope I didn't close the window. Hold on.
To run the whole thing
We do, I'll
again.
do it
We'll have to
again.
spend
Yeah.
precious
I think the
seconds.
link here, well, what I'll ask is this does use, because it's live, it does use, like we are paying for AI usage,
Ah,
but
yes.
go ahead and click on that and try it out yourself. Just please don't abuse it, Dan.
Putting a lot of trust in Dan.
By the way I made that was actually a different tool. It's called bolt.new, BOLT. I'll put it in .new, just like that other replit. And once you're done programming it, you hit deploy, and this is what it gives you.
So since we have a couple more minutes and I don't have any Q&A that are still open, I'm curious a little bit about these, actually I'm very curious about these kind of coding companion tools. In my nights and weekends, I am not a theater major, I am a game developer.
Mhm.
And there are just a plethora of different game development tools. In the indie space, those tools are often not as well known. People might recognize the names like Unreal or Unity, lots of tools available to help with that. But if I want to do something really advanced in Twine, can I teach the AI to use Twine script?
Um, I
He's cooking. He's cooking something up, you guys. I can tell.
I don't know.
Okay.
I've never
Great.
asked it,
Okay.
and I don't know what
Maybe
twine is. But
let's
again,
let's mhm.
my general thing is ask it.
Yeah.
My guess is there's a way to find it. Uh, let's see.
You asking it
And
right now?
can you see my screen?
No, I think I'm still sharing.
Oh, sure.
Or
I
maybe
don't
I'm not.
stop sharing and see my screen.
Where'd it go?
Hope everyone else can see it.
Okay, we can see Josh's screen, so I don't know what I'm looking at.
All right, that's fine. They're getting thumbs up. So what I want to
Okay,
point out
cool.
is like in your Copilot, you'd be able to build all this code, right? Or if you went into ChatGPT or anything, and you could ask it, which I've done, hey, what do I do with this? How do I create this into a program? It'll say step 1, download this, step 2, do that, right? But this just builds it.
Hmm.
So this is what it's built right now. I'm guessing this isn't exactly what you wanted. Can you see this, by the way?
Yeah, I can see it. It's similar. Yeah, interesting.
Now, one thing I love, by the way, you can't do this with a tool, but you can with a new hire. Make it better. So we'll just see what it does.
Hmm.
And then cognitively, I'm not overwhelmed with this idea of I have to decide what to do next. Because, by the way, you could always roll it back, right? So I think this idea of this being a digital photography is very important. instead of having to only take photos because you have a limited amount of film and then you have to pay to process it, you don't have to do that anymore. You can take as many pictures as you want. You can ask for as many things as you want. You could build 10 prototype games in an hour,
Mhm.
and then we can respond to those. Different mix. So anyway, I'm just seeing what it's going to keep creating for us. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. And then there's these deploy buttons up there. So, which by the way, just going back to my neurodiversity comment, this is why it is a game changer for those of us who are neurodiverse. Because if you have this idea for a computer program or a way to solve something, you will spend hours trying to figure it out, generally to no avail because you just run into this block. I can explore these ideas in minutes.
Mhm.
And I don't have to
Really?
worry about, here you go. So this is the better one.
Oh, yeah. It speeds up iteration. It just orders of magnitude.
There you go.
Ooh, we even have a health. We have health. We have stats, health, strength,
Yeah.
wisdom,
So,
inventory, empty.
and can I just, because we're learning and development here,
Hmm.
could probably just ask this to send XAPI code to an LRS now.
Yes.
So I just created a learning experience outside of all of my traditional content development platforms that I can put anywhere on any server, and I can still grab the data out of it. That is, just let that sink in as a L&D professional for a second. That's a game changer. And for those of you like me who've been frustrated by this shift from instructional designer to developer, they sort of like merged, right? Where to be an instructional designer, you have to work on these like game changer.
Yeah.
And then once you get here, you'll pass it off to your developer to finish off, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not about getting 100%. It's about getting the 80% faster.
About getting a million ideas that are 80% done in
Yeah.
minutes.
Much, much faster.
And by the way, while you're doing this, I just want to point out, you're still seeing the code. You can still ask it. If you did this, if you chose to do this through ChatGPT, it would be coding, but then you'd have to download it. You'd have to install it. So you're learning while you're doing. And by the way, isn't that what we want? Passion transfer, motivation, exploratory learning. Do you remember your telling ain't training?
All right. I think we've exhausted everybody. Steve says, "Oh dear Lord."
Yeah,
So
I
maybe that's
saw
where we
that.
sign off for today.
Yeah. And you know what, Josh? I can clearly see your passion about this topic.
I I
It was so
appreciate that.
obvious.
And I appreciate that. And one thing I want to point out to everyone is that what you read as passion is actually a judgment of several things I may be consciously or unconsciously doing, including a louder voice, more inflection in my voice, ups and downs, hand movements, right? So I would simply reflect that what I project as passion is something you can project as well. Because even if I don't feel it, I can project it, you know?
I would have just said you're like my Italian family doing all of those gestures.
Hey,
What's the matter for you?
yeah, there you go.
Anyway, thank you again so much, Josh and Alan and Liesel, for a wonderful presentation.